line. It's a very rigid pipe, and we're going to put it down into this jar, but we must keep tension on this line at all times. So we make the hole in the jar smaller than the 3/8 line. We then take a knife and taper the edge of the line so that it can be forced down into the jar, where it will take on tension and will be held in position and protected against vacuum. Don't use a drill. Use pliers or something like this to actually widen the hole slowly. You must have a good tight seal here. If you get this too big, you've ruined the lid. You'll have to get another one. Our amazing sealant is actually poster putty. This is the stuff that you put posters on walls with, and it's also the stuff that you can super seal your vacuum pressure fuel cell. It's completely reusable. The cost is very inexpensive. Works far better than silicone, Bondo, anything else you could possibly imagine, because it's reusable, can handle the temperatures, and it heals itself under the state of vacuum. No other compound will do this. It's actually some sort of latex. Regardless, this blue stuff works miracles on our vacuum pressure fuel cell. If you try other chemicals, you're going to have to apply different methods on maintenance and working on this, so stick with what we show you and the costs will stay down. This putty can actually handle over 25 inches of vacuum, and that's under a load condition from the engine. We need this kind of performance from this sealant. This is the completed fuel cell body. We're going to have to locate this under the hood. Now this 3/8 plastic line is going to be coated with a special kind of wire that's called magnet wire. This magnet wire is used in motors, generators, and it actually will carry current and produce a magnetic field. Now we're going to use this magnetic field to take advantage of some amazing things about oxygen and hydrogen. This is the old one. It was obviously way too close to the jar itself. The bare wires were a definite hazard. You can actually see where the putty got in the way, and we've refined this, and I'm going to show you how to build it from the ground up. You should be able to obtain this particular kit online or at an electronics shop. It's very important that you get this kit. It contains 40 foot of 22 gauge wire, 75 foot of number 26 gauge wire, and 200 feet of number 30 gauge wire. Each is color coded, and it is very important that you put these on in the proper order, starting with the largest wire. This wire will act as a base against the plastic pipe. This thing uses about 5 to 8 watts of electrical energy. That's a lot of energy on top of a plastic pipe. So it's very important that you do this exactly as we show you in this video. Now this thing has never caught fire or burnt a pipe yet. However, this is still experimental, so please always use with caution. Measure back at least this far from the end, and when we wind this thing, we're only going to go one direction. You can't go both. You never turn around. We're going to start by attaching this wire to this hose, and we want to make sure we have plenty of altitude above the jar so that it never interferes with the insertion into the jar itself. Just simply start, measure back, and tie this wire to the actual plastic hose. Very small turns like this knot are actually kind of insignificant. We're going to have many turns around this pipe before we're finished. So make your knot. You're going to want to attach this knot with a little tape, because it may tend to spin on the slippery plastic pipe. We have to wind a coil on this, and we don't want this thing slipping. Just take some electrical tape and tape it to the plastic tube. Don't worry about how it looks. We're going to have a lot of dressing up to do when we get done. We're going to use some heat shrink tubing, and we're going to make this thing look really professional. But we have to wind a very large coil. Now, if you've never wound a magnetic coil, don't be intimidated. It's not that hard. We start with this larger gauge wire, and we're going one direction only. And we try to keep going forward. It's very critical on this bottom layer that you make no mistakes. You can't overlap these wires. Now you can have very small gaps in between these wires as you bend this along, but you can't go back over the wires that you've already put on the hose. Always forward, never backward. Just keep winding and keep winding and keep winding until you reach the end of this spool. Go forward, push this hose down, and check your progress and check your work. You want it good and snug, and it holds really nicely. There may be some small spots where you can see the exposed plastic. You're trying to reduce these, but they're almost unavoidable. Wind and push, wind and push. You're winding this coil around this 3/8 plastic hose. Magnet wire is very special. Magnet wire is actually coated with enamel. This enamel coating allows it to be wrapped round and round itself without shorting out. We can induce very large magnetic currents using this kind of wire. It's used in all generators, it's used in radios. Pretty much nothing electronic would function without this amazing enamel-coated coil wire. It's very important that you use all 40 feet of this wire on this 3/8 hose. Make sure that it's very snug and very tight. This first layer is very important because it will be the base for the rest of the spools of wire, which will induce the magnetic charge into the hydrogen-oxygen gas. When you finally reach the end, secure it with a piece of tape so it doesn't slide back. Now, this enamel coating is actually almost invisible on this larger gauge wire. You can see it on the smaller gauges, but the larger gauge, definitely almost invisible. I'm going to burn this off with a lighter so that I'm positive I don't have any of this material interfering with my electrical circuit. On the next stage of wire, you can see it burning off the green enamel coating. It's pretty easy to spot this one, but on this larger wire, it's almost invisible. Once I clean this off, you won't even be able to tell where the wire and the enamel stop. This next size wire that we're using is actually much longer than the first wire. It's 75 feet long, and we're going to coil it around in a very similar fashion. It has this enamel coating that you can clearly see once you've burned it off the end. This is where we're making our electrical connection. The electrical current will go through that coil and through this connection, so we want to make sure that we have no electrical resistance, a good solid connection, and it's going to require a little bit of soldering. Wrap the 2 gauges of wires together very tightly where you've removed the enamel coating. We're then going to apply some solder, and we're going to isolate this connection from the rest of the coil. Make this very tight and clean it up. You don't want any of that enamel interfering with the electrical connections. This is pretty much the wrong way to go about it, but it does work on the first 2 wires. I'm letting my soldering gun heat up, but in the meantime, I'm moving on. I just need a very small amount to seal these wires forever in my coil. But I can tell it's not as easy as I thought it would be. Looks like I've got it. That's good enough. That's going to hold, and that's going to make that electrical connection possible. Let it cool, and we're going to apply a coating. A coil is only good as its weakest link, and all your connections are definitely the weak links. So we coat this with a little bit of electrical tape, and we're going to lay it down just like I show you here against this tube, and then we're going to actually wrap it with the green wire. Now it's okay to go backward just a little bit as you're making this connection. We're actually using some of this wire to tie this down, but we do our very best to continue the path back down the copper tubing. This next layer is going to have a little bit less need for the accuracy, although we still want to keep this wire as tight as possible, blocking out the wire below. As we get going, we'll develop a pattern and we'll be able to get the coil moving like we want it to. I'll show you just how to do this. once you get the connection buried in the wire, like you need this, then you start the forward progression, staying in the groove as best as possible until you are away from this rough area where the connection is. It tends to make it hard to wind the coil at this point, so you keep going, maintaining the same direction of spinning all times. After you've made some progress, you'll be able to wind down the coil and then slide the next layer down just like this. It may take you a while to find the pattern that works best for you, but you want to slide this down and keep it as tight as possible on the next layer. You're trying to block out the copper with the coils. Wind and turn and tighten all the way back down the copper tube toward where we originally started, maintaining the same direction of spin with the wire. Now, because the wire length is longer, you're actually going to have some extra when you reach the bottom. So what you do, go all the way down to the black tape and then start back up toward where you just came from. Never going backward, always winding forward, always maintaining the same direction. You'll soon run out of wire if you follow directions, and then it will be time to add our third spool. Continue forward, back up the tube in the direction that we just came from. Now, when you've finally finished wrapping the 75 feet of magnetic wire around this tube, it should come out about this far from the bottom. We're going to take and we're going to actually burn off the enamel coating on this 26 gauge green wire, again like we did when we first started. We are then going to take 200 feet of 30 gauge wire and connect this to this 26 gauge wire the same way we did before, soldering it, making sure we have an excellent connection to carry the current. Once you get a really good connection and a good solder between the 26 and the 30 gauge wire, then you're going to insulate this with a piece of electrical tape like we did before, and we're going to bury this in the coil, isolating it from the other wires so that it doesn't touch anything. This next spool of wire is 200 feet long. It's okay, you've made it this far. Just remember, always forward, never backward. Maintain the same direction of wire winding. Here we go. We're going to wind this all the way back down to the other end of the tube, turn around and come back this way and wrap this coil. Now, as before, we take some of the wire and we bury the electrical connection we've just made. Now, the accuracy is less on the smaller wire, but we still try to always go forward, never back. That is to say, when you're winding and you see a gap behind what you've already done, you don't go back for it, you continue forward, because you do have another layer coming up with 200 feet of wire to wrap around this hose. You reach the end, continue winding the same direction, and return back from whence you came. Continue carefully back down the tube, always trying to eliminate the green spots that you see shining through, down to this point down here. We'll reach it shortly. Just continue patiently winding, and you're almost finished. You eventually will reach the end of the 200-foot spool of 30 gauge wire, and when you do, you're going to solder this to the main 12-volt connections, which are going to power this on top of our fuel cell. It still has this enamel coating just like the other wires, and we're going to have to connect these to our main power source. So we're going to have to clean off the enamel coating on both of these wires, because it's also on the copper wire. And we're going to do this and solder this to a main connection. So taking a look at the entire tube, this is what it should look like at this stage. You should have most of the green completely covered all the way down to this point here. This is where our connections are, where we're going to solder our 12-volt power supply, and this will tap into the vacuum system of the car. Now we've oversized these wires. This is actually number 12 gauge wire. We do this for efficiency reasons, and I suggest you do the same. It's only going to carry about half an amp, and this wire can carry much more current than that, but for efficiency reasons we've used this much larger wire. We're going to tin the tips of this large wire so that we can make sure that we have a very good connection between these wires and our magnet wire, which is connecting to our flux coil. Be very careful not to breathe these fumes. Don't let them get in your eyes. You want to tin the tips of the copper wires like this so that they'll make a very good connection to the magnet wire. You want to use plenty of solder. And remember, a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. So all you really need is a spot of this on the tips of the wires, and this is going to do nicely. Now we're going to attach this to our plastic tube just like this, and we're going to use a wire tie to secure this in position. Then we're going to actually solder the two wires to our 12-volt power supply feed. Make sure this is really secure. Then you're going to want to trim off the extra, because it'll just get in your way. Once we have the main wire in position, then we can solder the magnet wires to the connections. We have to remove the enamel coating. This is critical. Do not forget to remove the enamel coating. Wrap each wire firmly around the connection